The day my father was buried, my stepmother smiled at me, not the polite smile people give when they're trying to be kind, not the nervous smile of someone uncomfortable with grief. This one was slow. Controlled, satisfied, her lips curved upward just enough for me to notice, just enough to make sure I understood. This wasn't sympathy. This was a victory. At first, I thought I imagined it. Grief plays tricks on your mind. Everyone says that. They tell you that when your chest feels hollow and your thoughts don't line up properly, you can't trust what you see. But later that day, when the guests had left and the house finally went quiet, she said something that confirmed it. Standing in the kitchen, still wearing black, she poured herself a glass of wine and said, almost casually, "It's strange how life solves problems for us when we're patient enough." She didn't look at me when she said it. But she didn't need to. I had been 9 years old when my real mother died. Cancer. Slow and unforgiving. The kind of illness that empties a house long before it empties a body. My father had tried to stay strong. He learned how to braid my hair badly, burned dinners often, forgot where he put things. But he showed up to every school event and never once missed saying goodnight. For 2 years, it was just us. Then Linda entered our lives. She met my father at a charity dinner. Volunteered at the hospital. Soft voice, warm eyes, the kind of woman people trusted instantly. When he introduced her to me, she knelt down to my height, smiled gently, and said, "I promise I'll take good care of both of you." Everyone believed her, including me. The first few months were perfect. She cooked elaborate meals, packed my lunches with notes inside, took pictures of us together and framed them in the hallway, but small things started changing. My bedroom, once next to my father's, became temporary storage while she redecorated. Temporary turned into permanent. I moved to the smallest room at the end of the hall. My allowance stopped coming regularly. When I asked, she'd smile and say, "Your father and I are teaching you responsibility." Then she began correcting me, in front of him. "You're remembering it wrong. You're exaggerating again. She's always been sensitive, you know." At first, he defended me. Then he hesitated. Then he stopped reacting at all. That's how manipulation works. Not loudly, quietly, slowly, one doubt at a time. The real cruelty began when I turned 15. She stopped pretending when we were alone. "You eat too much. No wonder your mother got sick, weak genes. Don't talk so much. People tolerate you because of your father." And when I cried, she smiled. The same controlled smile I would later see at the funeral. The worst part wasn't the insults. It was the isolation. Phone privileges disappeared. Friends stopped being allowed over. She scheduled chores during school events, told teachers I was emotionally unstable. Every time I tried to tell my father, she cried before I could finish. Said I was acting out because I missed my mother. Said I needed therapy. Said I was confused. Eventually, he stopped asking what was wrong, not because he didn't care, because he was tired. And tired people believe whoever speaks first. When my father got sick, everything accelerated. Linda took control instantly. She organized the appointments, managed the medications, took over the finances to reduce his stress. She moved permanently into the master bedroom and started sleeping with the door locked. Visitors were limited, including me. "You're too emotional," she said. "He needs peace, not drama. Let me handle this." I believed her. Until the nurse at the hospital looked at me one day and said, confused, "You're his daughter. We were told you live out of state." That was the first crack. That night, I waited until Linda went to bed. Then I went to my father's room quietly. He looked thinner than I remembered. His voice was weak, but his eyes were sharp in a way I hadn't seen in years. When he saw me, he whispered, "You came anyway." I told him everything, not dramatically, just facts. And for a long time, he said nothing. Then he squeezed my hand and said, barely audible, "I should have listened sooner." Before I could ask what he meant, he added, "Whatever happens, trust the lawyer." That was the last conversation we ever had. 3 days later, he died. At the funeral, Linda played the perfect widow, tears at the right moments, hand on her heart when people hugged her, soft speeches about love and devotion. Then, when no one was watching, she leaned toward me and whispered, You'll need to move out soon. This house isn't really yours anymore. And she smiled. The weeks after the funeral passed in a blur that never quite cleared. Linda didn't rush me out immediately. That would have looked suspicious. Instead, she became gentle, too gentle. She cooked my favorite meals again, asked how I was sleeping, left clean towels folded on my bed, even started calling me sweetheart the way she used to years ago. At first, I thought grief had softened her. Then I noticed the details. The mail stopped coming to my name. My father's study, once always unlocked, stayed closed. Bank statements vanished from the kitchen drawer. And every time I asked about anything financial, she answered calmly, "Your father trusted me with all of that. You don't need to worry about grown-up things." Not angry, not defensive, just dismissive, like I no longer existed in the same category as her. One evening, she invited me to sit with her in the living room. She poured tea, placed a blanket over my shoulders, and said, "I know you must be scared about the future." I nodded. She smiled sympathetically and continued, "Don't worry. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Of course, you'll need to learn independence soon." That's what your father would have wanted. It sounded kind, but something about the way she said independence made my stomach tighten. The next morning, she gave me a list: house chores, daily schedules, times when I was expected to be out of the house so she could handle paperwork. And at the bottom, written casually, begin looking for alternative living arrangements within 3 months. No threat. No anger, just inevitability. That was Linda's style. She never pushed. She arranged the world so that the only path left was the one she wanted. A few days later, she suggested we visit the lawyer together. Not to read the will. Just formalities, she said lightly. Names on documents, accounts to close. Very boring things. At the office, she did all the talking, referred to herself as his sole caregiver, corrected the lawyer when he mentioned me as an heir. "Oh, she's still very young. And not very organized. My husband trusted me to manage everything." The lawyer looked at me carefully, then said nothing. On the way home, Linda was cheerful, bought pastries, played music, and said, almost affectionately, "Life rewards people who stay calm during chaos." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, so I went to my father's study. The door was locked. That had never happened before. When I asked Linda about it the next morning, she said pleasantly, "Oh, I'm organizing his things." Some documents are very personal. Personal means dangerous. Over the next week, objects started disappearing. My childhood photos from the hallway, my mother's necklace from the drawer. Even a painting my father had once told me he wanted me to have. When I asked, she said gently, "Oh, those were misplaced. Grief makes us forget." And I almost believed her. Almost. Until I found a box in the garage labeled donations. Inside were my mother's clothes, my school trophies, old letters from my father. She wasn't throwing things away. She was erasing me. Slowly. Carefully, so when I finally left, there would be no evidence I had ever belonged there. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice was low, pleasant. "Yes, the house should sell quickly. A very desirable area. No, the daughter won't be an issue. She's temporary." Temporary. That word stayed with me. That night I went back to my father's study. I tried the handle again. Locked. But this time something was different. A thin folder had been slid halfway under the door, as if someone had pushed it out by accident or on purpose. Inside were photocopies, medical forms, legal notes, and one handwritten page in my father's handwriting, just 3 lines. "If you are reading this, trust the lawyer. Do not confront her. Everything is already arranged." My hands shook. Not from fear, from realization. My father knew, not everything, but enough to protect me quietly. And suddenly Linda's kindness made sense. She wasn't softening, she was preparing. For a future where I no longer existed. 2 mornings later, the doorbell rang at exactly 9. Linda wasn't expecting anyone. I knew because she was still in her robe, hair loose, irritation already forming on her face as she walked toward the door. When she opened it, a man stood there in a dark suit, holding a leather folder. "Mrs. Carter?" he asked. She straightened instantly. "Yes." My name is Daniel Harris. I was your husband's attorney. For half a second, just one, the smile on her face collapsed, not fully, but enough. Enough for me to see panic flicker behind her eyes before discipline pulled it back into place. Oh, she said lightly, stepping aside. Of course, please come in. He glanced past her and looked directly at me, not politely, not casually, with recognition, as if he already knew exactly who I was. Linda noticed. Her fingers tightened slightly around the doorframe. We sat in the living room. Tea appeared, biscuits on a tray. Linda sat closest to him, body angled protectively toward the folder in his hands. So, she said warmly, how can we help? He didn't open the folder. Instead, he said, I'm here to speak with your stepdaughter. Silence. The kind that makes clocks suddenly sound loud. Linda laughed softly. Oh, I handle all of my husband's affairs. She's still adjusting. I understand, he replied calmly, but the instructions were very specific. He turned to me. Would you mind walking with me to the study? Linda's smile remained, but it no longer reached her eyes. There's no need for secrecy, she said gently. We're family. He paused, then said something that changed the air in the room. Your husband asked that I never discuss certain matters in your presence. That was the first time anyone had ever set a boundary with her. She froze just long enough for it to become visible, then she recovered. Of course, she said softly. If that's what he wanted. But as we stood, she added quietly, almost sweetly, there's nothing to worry about, sweetheart. Adults just talk about complicated things. In the hallway, the lawyer lowered his voice. You found the folder, didn't you? I nodded. He exhaled slowly. Good. That means he trusted you enough. Inside the study, he finally opened the leather folder, but not to the will, to photographs, printed screenshots, time stamps, audio transcripts. I recognized the rooms, the hallway, the living room, even this study. My breath caught. He installed recording devices 2 years ago, the lawyer said quietly. Not everywhere, only common areas. Perfectly legal. I stared at the papers, recordings of arguments, phone calls, whispers I had never heard. She doesn't know, he added, and she must not find out yet. Why not? I whispered. Because, he said gently, your father didn't want revenge. He paused. He wanted proof. At that exact moment, we heard Linda moving in the kitchen, the soft clink of cups. The slow rhythm of someone pretending to be calm. The lawyer closed the folder. There's a meeting scheduled, he said. 3 days from now, official reading of the will. Why wait? I asked. Because, he said, something is missing. Before I could ask what, he stood. In the hallway, Linda greeted us with perfect timing. Everything settled? She asked sweetly. Yes, he said. But I'll need to return before the reading. Of course, she replied. You're welcome anytime. As he left, she turned to me, and for the first time in years, her voice lost warmth. What did he want with you? Just memories, I said. She studied my face, longer than necessary. That night, she went into the study. I know because I heard the lock, heard drawers opening. Heard paper sliding, searching, not for money, for something she was afraid existed. The next morning, she was different, quieter, watching me, measuring. She asked strange questions. Did your father ever seem suspicious of me? Did he leave you anything personal? Did he ever mention recordings? I denied everything, and she smiled. But now, there was a calculation behind it. That afternoon, she made a phone call I was never meant to hear. I need everything finalized before Friday, she said. Yes, even if it means pressuring the girl. No, there can't be delays. Friday, the day of the will, whatever my father had planned, Linda was now racing against it. And she had no idea, she was already too late. Friday came sooner than I expected, not because time moved quickly, because Linda made sure every hour felt deliberate. That morning, she woke me early and asked if I wanted breakfast. She hadn't done that in years. She cooked eggs exactly the way my father used to like them. Placed the plate in front of me carefully and said, "Today is an important day for both of us." The way she said both of us sounded territorial. While I ate, she paced lightly through the kitchen, rehearsing phone calls out loud. Bank at 10, realtor at noon, Lawyer at 3. Each word is measured. Each appointment was placed like a chess piece. Before leaving, she stopped behind my chair and rested her hand briefly on my shoulder. Not affection, ownership. Remember, she said softly, whatever happens today, we must present ourselves as united. People respect stability. Then she smiled, that controlled smile. At the law office, she insisted on arriving early, sat closest to the conference table, placed her purse beside the main chair, marked territory again. When Daniel Harris entered, she stood immediately, extend both hands warmly. So good to see you again, she said. You were very important to my husband. He accepted the handshake politely. Did not mirror her warmth. Instead, he said calmly, let's wait until everyone arrives. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to him. We're the only family, she replied. Yes, he said. But not the only witnesses. That unsettled her. 10 minutes later, 2 more people entered, my father's sister, and a senior clerk from the firm. Linda hadn't expected an audience. She masked it well, but I saw her jaw tighten slightly. The meeting began formally. Papers aligned, folders opened. Then Linda interrupted, before the will, before instructions. Before anything dangerous. I'd like to clarify something first, she said gently. My husband was very ill at the end. He wasn't always lucid. The room went still. She continued carefully. There were moments of confusion, delusions even. We were concerned about his mental state. I understood immediately. She was planting doubt, about the will, about the recordings, about everything. The lawyer looked at her steadily. Your husband passed all cognitive evaluations required for legal changes, he said. She nodded sympathetically. Of course, but emotional manipulation is subtle. People influence the sick. She glanced at me, not accusing, implying. A long silence followed. Then my aunt spoke quietly. He never once questioned his daughter's integrity. Linda smiled politely. Families protect their own, even when they shouldn't. And there it was, her first direct strike. Daniel closed one folder, opened another. Before we proceed, he said, I need to address something. Linda leaned back, relaxed, confidence. He continued, yesterday, someone contacted this office requesting an urgent amendment to the will. Her breath stalled. An amendment, she repeated calmly. From whom? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said, the caller claimed to be acting on your behalf. The air thickened. I never requested that, she said smoothly. Yes, he replied. That's why we declined. Her smile wavered. Just slightly. Who made the call? She asked. He finally looked at her directly. The voice matched a recording we already have. Silence, not heavy, dangerous. Her fingers tightened around her purse. I don't understand, she said quietly. That's all right, he replied. Understanding is not required. For the first time, I saw fear, don't panic. Calculation, she was adjusting strategy in real time. A few seconds later, she changed tone completely. Softened, turned toward me. Sweetheart, she said gently, you must be overwhelmed. Legal matters are frightening. If there's anything you've misunderstood, now is the time to say so. She wasn't asking. She was warned. Daniel closed the folder again. We'll begin the reading shortly, he said. But first, there is a private matter to discuss. He stood, gestured to me. Miss Carter, would you come with me? Linda rose instantly. There's no need. I'm afraid there is, he interrupted calmly. She hesitated, then sat back down, smiling. But now her eyes followed every movement I made. In the hallway, he spoke very softly. She's trying to invalidate the entire will, he said. If she succeeds, everything goes to probate. And then, I asked. And then, he said quietly, she controls the outcome. My stomach tightened. She's already preparing her defense, he added. Which means she knows something is coming. Before I could respond, a clerk rushed toward us, whispered urgently into his ear. His face changed. Someone accessed the secure archive 10 minutes ago, he said slowly. From inside this building. I felt a cold spread through my chest. She followed us, I whispered. He nodded. And she's not searching for money, he said. She's searching for evidence. We returned to the conference room pretending nothing had changed. Linda was speaking softly with my aunt, laughing at something unimportant. Perfect control. If she had just broken into the firm's archive, no one could tell by looking at her. When Daniel sat, he placed his folder carefully in front of him and said calmly, "Before we continue, there is a procedural delay." Linda's eyes sharpened. "Delay?" she asked. "On what grounds?" "Security," he replied. She nodded, relaxed again. "Of course, these things happen." Inside, I was shaking. Someone had accessed the archive from inside the building. Only employees had that clearance. Unless Linda had help. 10 minutes later, a woman from the firm entered, pale, carrying a tablet. She whispered to Daniel. This time, he didn't hide his reaction. He closed his eyes briefly, then looked at me, not Linda. At me. That was when I understood. Whatever had been taken wasn't meant to protect me. It was meant to protect him. He cleared his throat. "There will be a short recess," he announced. "Please remain available." Linda rose instantly. "I'll use the restroom," she said pleasantly, and walked out, too fast. Daniel stood and said quietly to me, "Do not leave my sight." In the hallway, voices murmured urgently. Clerks passed with folders held tight against their chests, doors closed, locked. For the first time since my father's death, I felt something shift, not Linda, in the entire story. Daniel led me into a small private office, closed the door, and said something I was not prepared to hear. "Your father wasn't just recording Linda." I stared at him. "He was recording himself." Silence. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He hesitated. Then I opened the folder slowly. Inside were transcripts I had never seen. Older, years older. "He came to me before he married her," Daniel said. "Because he was afraid of something." "Afraid of what?" "Of you finding out the truth about your mother." The room tilted slightly. "My mother died of cancer," I said. "Yes," he replied. "But not the way you were told." He slid one page toward me, a hospital discharge form, signed by my father, dated 6 months before her death. "She was improving," he said quietly. "Responding unusually well to treatment." My chest tightened. "Then why?" "Because," he said softly, "your father removed her from the trial." I froze. He believed the side effects were too risky. He signed her out against medical advice. I couldn't breathe. "She relapsed 3 months later," he continued, "and never recovered." I stared at the paper, hands numb. "He blamed himself," Daniel said, "completely, and he never forgave himself." I whispered, "What does this have to do with Linda?" He exhaled slowly. "Linda was your mother's nurse." The words didn't land at first, then they shattered everything. "She cared for her during the final months," he said. "Became close to your father afterward." "No," I said, "that's not." "She didn't cause your mother's death," he interrupted gently. "But she knew about the discharge, she knew about his guilt. And she used it." My hands started trembling. "She never married him for money," he continued. "She married him because she owned his secret." I felt cold everywhere. "That's why he installed the recordings," he said. "Not just to catch her abusing you," he paused, "but to record his confession." I looked up sharply. "Confession?" He recorded himself admitting what he did, over and over, not for the police. "For you." Before I could speak, the door burst open. Linda stood there, breathing hard, no smile. No mask, just a naked calculation. "I wondered how long it would take," she said calmly. Daniel rose instantly. "This room is private." "You can leave," she said softly. "This is family business now." He didn't move. Instead, he said something that finally broke her control. "The archive breach was traced to your assistant," he said. "She downloaded the wrong file." Linda's eyes flickered. "The confession is already backed up," he continued, "in 3 separate locations." Silence. Then Linda laughed, not hysterical, amused. "Of course it is," she said. "He always was dramatic." She turned to me, and for the first time spoke honestly. "Do you know what your father asked me to do?" she said calmly. "He begged me to destroy those recordings." My heart pounded. "He said if you ever heard them, you would hate him forever." She stepped closer. "I protected him," she said softly. "For years. And in return," I whispered, "you destroyed me." She studied my face, then said something that cut deeper than any insult. No, she said. I prepared you. Before I could respond, Daniel's phone rang. He answered, listened, and then slowly looked at me in shock. The secure drive, he said quietly. The confession file, he paused, was deleted 5 minutes ago. Linda smiled again, that satisfied smile, the same one from the funeral, and said gently, some truths are more dangerous than revenge. For several seconds, no one spoke, not because there was nothing to say. Because what had just happened changed the meaning of everything. The confession file was gone, deleted, not hidden, not locked, erased. Daniel stared at his phone as if willing the words to change. Linda watched him calmly, almost tenderly. Relax, she said softly. He kept backups, he always did. Daniel looked at her sharply. Then why delete this one? She smiled faintly. Because, she said, this was the only copy labeled in his handwriting. The room went very still. She turned to me. You see, she said gently, your father never trusted digital memory. He trusted symbols, personal labels, emotional markers. I understood instantly. That file hadn't been erased to destroy evidence, it had been erased to destroy me. To remove the only version that proved the confession was meant for me. The only version that connected my father's guilt to my inheritance. Daniel said slowly, you can't undo what's already in the will. No, she agreed calmly, but I can change how she feels about receiving it. She stepped closer to me, not threatening. Almost maternal. You wanted justice, she said quietly. But what will you do now, knowing the man you're defending killed your mother? The words landed like poison. Daniel moved between us. That's enough. Linda didn't argue. Instead, she picked up her purse, smoothed her coat, and said very politely, then let's finish the reading. Back in the conference room, the atmosphere had changed. My aunt watched Linda carefully now. The clerk avoided her eyes. Daniel began. Formal language, legal phrasing, property placed in trust, assets secured, exactly as planned. Linda listened without interrupting. Too calm, when it ended, Daniel looked up. Under the terms of the will, he said, you will receive a monthly allowance, provided you never contest the trust and never attempt contact with Miss Carter again. Linda nodded. I accept. Too easily. No argument, no protest. That should have been my victory. Instead, I felt uneasy. As the meeting ended, Linda approached me one last time, not angry, not bitter, almost kind. You'll inherit a beautiful life, she said softly. Just remember, every comfort in it comes from a choice your father regrets more than anything. And then she left. No drama, no scene, just gone. In the weeks that followed, strange things began happening. Not threats, not attacks, absences, her phone disconnected. Her apartment emptied overnight. Her name was removed from professional registries. Bank accounts closed. Not frozen. Closed. Daniel searched quietly, found nothing. No forwarding address, no activity, like she had erased herself. At first, I was relieved. Then letters started arriving. No sender, no address, just short sentences typed on plain paper. He loved you, but he chose himself first. Then weeks later, some guilt never dies. It only changes owners. I never replied. I never showed them to anyone. I burned them. But the damage had already settled. Not fear, doubt about my father. About my mother, about myself. Months later, while clearing the last boxes from the house, I found something I had never seen before. Hidden inside one of my father's old books, a small flash drive. No label, just tape. Inside was not the confession, it was a video. My father sitting alone in the study, older, tired, looking directly into the camera. He said, if you are watching this, then Linda failed. I stopped breathing. I won't explain everything, he continued quietly, because explanations don't heal guilt. He paused. But I need you to know one thing. I did not cause your mother's death. My chest tightened. I removed her from the trial because the doctor told me privately the treatment was damaging her organs beyond recovery. He swallowed. They were going to publish her case as a failure. I chose dignity over delay. Tears blurred my vision. And Linda, he said softly, was the only person who knew how close I came to destroying myself afterward. He looked tired. But she never loved me, he added. She loved the leverage. The video ended. No signature, no goodbye, just silence. I never told anyone about it. Not Daniel, not my aunt, not even myself fully. As for Linda, she was never seen again. No obituary, no records, no trace. Just a woman who vanished the moment she lost control. Years later, sometimes, when I walk past reflective windows, I catch a glimpse of a familiar smile. Not on a face, in my own expression. And I remind myself of the only lesson that mattered. Some people don't lose when they're punished. They lose when they no longer exist in the story at all. After that, life became quiet, not peaceful, just quieter than chaos. The trust stabilized everything. The house sold without complications. The money arrived regularly, managed by people who never asked emotional questions. On paper, I had won. But victory is not always loud. Sometimes it settles slowly, like dust after a storm. For a long time, I avoided thinking about Linda, not because I feared her. Because I feared what she had left behind. Doubt, about my father, about my mother, about the past I thought I understood. The video stayed hidden in a locked drawer. I never deleted it. But I never watched it again either. Some truths are meant to be known once and then allowed to rest. Years passed. I built a life that had nothing to do with inheritance. Moved cities. Changed careers. I learned how to trust people again, carefully. Every once in a while, someone would mention Linda. A distant acquaintance would say, "Whatever happened to your stepmother?" And I would answer honestly, "I don't know," because I didn't, and because it no longer mattered. One evening, almost 5 years later, I received a call from Daniel. His voice sounded older, tired. "I thought you should know," he said quietly. "Know what? We closed the last inactive account in her name today." I waited. "There was nothing in it," he added. "No money, no records, no address, just emptiness." "She planned that," I said. "Yes," he replied. "She planned to disappear the moment she lost leverage." We were silent for a moment. Then he said something that stayed with me. "Some people don't fear consequences," he said. "They fear irrelevance." That night, I finally opened the drawer, took out the flash drive, and watched the video one last time, not for answers, but for closure. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. At the very end, just before the recording cut, my father looked away from the camera, toward the door, and whispered, "She's listening." A chill ran through me, not because I believed Linda had been there, but because I realized something deeper. My father had lived his final years in quiet fear. Not in prison, not of judgment, of losing his daughter's respect. And in trying to protect me from pain, he had almost lost me anyway. The next morning, I deleted the file, not out of denial. Out of mercy, for him, for myself, for a past that no longer needed a voice. As for Linda, I stopped wondering where she went. People like her don't vanish by accident, they vanish by design. Not because they are strong, but because disappearing is the only way to survive after control is gone. And then, one afternoon, I understood something that finally set me free. Linda didn't lose when she lost the money. She didn't lose when she lost the house. She didn't even lose when she lost her name. She lost the moment. No one remembered her as important. No story. No legacy, no witness, just absence. And that is the quietest form of justice. Now, when people ask me how I survived my childhood, I don't talk about revenge. I don't talk about inheritance. I say this instead. Some people enter your life to teach you strength by showing you exactly what you never want to become. And I mean it. Because the greatest victory I ever had was not exposing her, not punishing her, not defeating her. It was building a life so complete that she no longer existed anywhere inside it.